Hello and welcome to the 64th episode of Growing Up Geek, the weekly podcast for geek entertainment and nostalgia. My name is Brad, and I am joined by a man who always carries proper identification, my brother Rob.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I just got my ID renewed today.
Heyo!
Heyo! Gotten a new picture, and I must say, on account of it being our 64th episode,
yes,
and 64 rules.
Oh gosh, those videos they used to send us.
Oh yeah, so high class, just thorough intellectual debate.
I remember the days when 64 was everything. 64
bits.
If Jason was listening, I'm sure he'll remember 360. Just a bunch of lazy kids. There's even a great line in there. I have it as my Xbox quote, but this is a snow level.
This is a snow level.
It's just a guy with barely enough energy to speak, commenting on the Mario snow level.
You didn't tell him about the Rumble Pack.
Exactly. All right, well, we better move on here. But I did want to say the reason I referenced your identification is I have to give a shout-out to my local cinema. Because when I went to see Watchmen this week, I approached the door, and a man from the theater came out and said, "If anyone is here to see Mall Cop or Fired Up, they are sold out." Now, this is Watchmen night, so I'm expecting, like, pandemonium. And then I realized why, is that Watchmen is rated R, and there are a ton of these 14-year-old kids that are coming and trying to see it. And I just thought, in my head, I didn't do it out loud, but I was like, yes! Because it meant that they card for ID at this theater. Yeah. So I appreciate it. It was packed to the hilt, but the audience was respectful. So
I remember almost not being able to get in to see The Matrix when it first came out. It never occurred to me it was an R-rated movie, and like I couldn't get in to see it.
Yeah.
And literally what happened was the clerk was getting off, and he was like, all right, I'm done, but the next guy coming, he really doesn't card.
I don't know if people know this, but rated R means if you're under 17, you need an adult. That's what the rating means.
Yeah.
And we're all for good viewing experiences in this day and age. So let's move on to Geek News.
Yeah.
This was a big week for me. Geek News rolled in, and I had a tough time picking our favorite. But Rob, what was your favorite geeky news story this week?
Totally geeking out just because this is always my thing. But this week, it was announced that Harmonix's Beatles game is in fact going to be the Beatles rock band. Or rock band Beatles.
I don't know why it's not rock band Beatles, but whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess like syntactically it's like, well, it was the Beatles rock band,
Yeah.
They just need to add the little apostrophe after the S,
They said it wasn't going to be like a rock band game, but I guess that sort of went out the window.
Yeah, it went out the window. And like when this type of stuff happens, that it's, okay, we need to cut back on development costs or whatever, but then they always try and talk it up like, well, we feel that the rock band formula is really the best way.
Right.
It's like you're lying out of your mouth.
Well, generally that's where people lie out of.
Generally.
I did see an exciting bit on this story, which is that it's coming out on 999, which for Beatles fans is a significant number, relating to hidden demonic messages.
Not so hidden. It's just John Lennon's number 9.
Yeah, right on.
Off the White Album, I believe. Or Revolver.
So I saw the viral the site for this, and it was just kind of like a warming up session sound. Kind of like get ready for it because you're going to play a lot of Beatles songs. And honestly, we've not been able to access this stuff digitally, so it's almost building to a fever pitch. Like, let me at these songs,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I really hope that this now means that these songs can be transferred onto the Rock Band stage proper so that you can play everything at once.
Right.
But it is cool that they're coming out with new peripherals that mimic the way the guitars looked and everything. Obviously, the most distinct would be Paul McCartney's bass, which is actually kind of a transformed violin body.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so that would be neat.
Now, you're not shelling out for that, are you?
No, well, the only thing is some of my current controllers are quitting out on me. The yellow
I'm having the same thing.
Died on my guitar, and it just makes it unplayable if something like that goes. So
you might actually get that violin guitar.
Something like that.
Cool.
So always fun to hear about the Beatles. And so, Brad, what was your news story for this week?
This story developed over the week, so I it was exciting to watch its progress. And it began for me with an image of a street pole with a piece of paper plastered on it that said, "There's something in the sea." and it was like a viral marketing campaign that's going around, which I haven't seen one of these in person. Have you?
No.
Okay, so it's this piece of paper, and it shows like a crappy sketch of the ocean, like photocopied, with like this red light glowing. And then if you go to that website, it's just kind of random snippets of like an investigation into the kidnapping of all of these girls in the late 60s. If you dig further into this site, basically what you find is description of mysterious figures, tall and thin, with red glowing faces or red lights emanating from their heads. And this ends up being the BioShock 2 viral site. So a lot of people had sort of speculated, well, maybe this is talking about big sisters because, they have red glowing lights, but they're tall and thin, unlike the big daddies. And sure enough, just yesterday, Game Informer, the magazine, which always gets a ton of exclusives, confirmed that, in fact, their cover this month is a large picture of a big sister.
Wow.
The new character in BioShock 2, and they also confirmed a return to Rapture.
Wow.
So BioShock was one of your favorite games. It was your number one game of 2007.
True.
Do you think that returning to Rapture is a good thing? What do you think about Big Sisters? Like, I'm going to throw this at you. Just go with it.
It all seems rather contrived to me. I mean, don't get me wrong. BioShock was an incredible game, but it was incredible for more reasons than it being Rapture, the Big Daddy, or things like that. A lot of the philosophy and things about that game just caught me. It had this twist. It had all these cool things, and as is the case with twists, it's hard to have a second one.
The Sixth Sense 2,
Right. I hope maybe they're setting it up like you're returning to Rapture, but then Rapture rises, halfway through the game, and
that's what I keep hoping. And the initial teaser that showed like the sort of city rising out of the sand on the beach, that really got me excited that maybe all of these girls who were little sisters had potentially, raised Rapture using their psychic powers or something. My mind went kind of all over the place. But
yeah,
returning to Rapture feels to me just unoriginal. Like, I always harp on the Matrix 2 for giving us just more Agent Smiths. People say they want more, but they really don't. What they want is something different, and a change in the story. And I think that these guys are all so talented.
Yeah, I think it would be cool if it played out as a story as these survivors of Rapture who escaped it,
Right.
And that's kind of like the good ending, you could say. The little sisters getting out.
Spoiler alert.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay. I mean, we'll say that is a potential ending.
You could at least have it that the little sisters or whatever that escaped are now being abducted and taken back. So once again, you have that rediscovery of what happened after you left.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think it should dwell on like, okay, well, what did people like about BioShock 1? Well, they liked this underwater city. Okay, well, let's have it there. That's not what I necessarily liked. I liked that it was something fresh. And if you rehash something fresh, it's not fresh anymore.
Yeah, a good point, yeah. So that is BioShock 2, and that takes us to our main topic of discussion this week, big movie. We're going to talk about Watchmen, the film based on the graphic novel. In fact, if you go back to episode 14, believe it or not, we reviewed the graphic novel version of Watchmen. Mm-hmm. So, full disclosure up front, you and I have both read it.
Yes.
We're coming to this not as Watchmen virgins. We know the story. So I'm just going to turn this over to you. What did you think of Watchmen?
My initial reaction when the movie ended, admittedly underwhelmed.
Okay.
The truth was that I didn't feel the same sense that I got out of reading the comic. My mind was completely blown when I read the comic book, right. And I had to reread it. And the kind of lingering feeling afterwards,
right.
And I remember even like fearing seeing the movie because to see the events of the comic books brought to life,
right.
It was a disturbing thought to me, and like how that would impact my own psyche. So it was weird. Obviously, like it didn't accomplish that, mm-hmm. But that being said, it still accomplished quite a heck of a lot, and I gotta give some credit to Zack Snyder for handling it the way he did. There was a lot of very inspired moments that I, on my own, couldn't have thought of. In afterwards, I'm like, that's brilliant.
Yeah.
Getting a little in depth, like I'd have to say, favorite thing is in many ways the soundtrack to this movie. Mm-hmm. They picked a very kind of Forrest Gump soundtrack,
Yeah, it's an amalgam of all the period
Exactly.
music, basically.
Bob Dylan for this opening montage that does a great job of doing a lot of the exposition work.
Very stylish.
Exactly.
Yes.
Jimi Hendrix towards the end. You have
Right.
all these
99 Luft balloons.
Right. It was really cool, and I felt like he did an extra good job linking this alternate reality to our own. Saying,
Right.
what if there were superheroes? Well, you'd have them naturally hanging out with David Bowie. And
yeah, there's an Andy Warhol shot in there real quick.
Yeah.
Which made me smile. He's a local.
Absolutely. I mean, I guess it was just the ending that left me, underwhelmed.
Yeah, and without spoiling anything, I will say that the ending is one of the few things that has been changed from the graphic novel. Right. It's significantly less weird.
True.
If I could say that. And so I can understand why the decision was made. But, of course, anytime you change something, you incur some wrath, and there has been some backlash.
Oh, I wanna get this clear. I'm not mad at him for changing what happened.
It doesn't even sound like you're mad at him.
No. Because I understand that. And I even watched an interview with him, and it made sense because he's like, what Alan Moore did was present you with a problem, essentially. You flip that page, you see the image, and you go, what? And you have to go back. And the thing about a comic is you're able to, and so in a way it was designed to work that way. But you didn't get the same type of time spent with the inhabitants of New York as you did in the comic book. And I understand the central story revolves around the superheroes.
Right, so you think that affected the emotional connection, maybe?
Exactly.
Yeah, I could not agree more with you. I actually expected that we might be a little different on this. You're spot on for my review as well.
Cool.
Comic book geeks will often bemoan the fact that it's not like the comic. And to me, Zack Snyder must have felt that way too, because he has delivered to us, panel by panel almost, like the strictest adaptation of a comic to the film as I've ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
This is the experiment, what would happen if you literally just took the comic and splattered it up on the screen, even when it's weird, such as, Dr. Manhattan's blue genitals, which a lot of people have, snickered at or whatever. That's in the comic, and I could see a lot of people saying, no, we're going to skip that. And you would even be within your rights because he wears underwear at times, but he's also nude at times, and they fully went for it. So, when you say that, it sounds like, okay, so it must be the perfect movie then, right? But no, not exactly. And the reason is that film is not a comic. Mm-hmm. And film, I've been thinking a lot about Lord of the Rings lately. And Peter Jackson, who you have this monumental work that everybody loves, and it's got this denseness to it, and you try to take that and adapt it to a film. And Peter Jackson said, look, I can't be a strict Tolkien literalist. I can't just put it on the screen. I have to bring the feel of the book across, And that's the part that I don't think that Watchmen succeeds at. Unfortunately, it to me, it felt a little cold, a little empty emotionally. Mm-hmm. With one exception, and that is Rorschach's character. And I think the audience that I was with reacted the most strongly to his character when he's in prison and he says, I'm not trapped in here with you, you're trapped in here with me. The entire audience flipped. I thought that came across perfectly, but yeah, I agree with you fully.
I really felt that the casting was incredibly well handled.
Absolutely.
I even thought Ozymandias, Adrian Veidt. I was kind of not too sure about Matthew Good because I was well, he looks kind of goofy and stuff. But when I saw him in the movie, I got it. Because he was 80s chic, he had
that's true.
That kind of clean, American Psycho look to him.
No, the casting is very good. I fully agree with you. I felt Silk Spectre, Malin Ackerman didn't pull it off as well as I would have liked. But again, that's some of my favorite scenes in the book, and I wanted her to infuse it with maybe more. I don't know. In the end, I don't think it's about that as much as it is the connection to me. But go on.
Jeffrey Dean Morgan as the comedian is
perfect.
So amazing to watch.
It's he looks everybody looks like their character. Everybody is wearing basically the literal costume.
And
you can't complain about any of that. And if that was all that a movie needed to be, this would be like the greatest movie ever, because it's the strictest thing I've ever seen.
Yeah. And I also, the peak of achievement with this movie was pulling off a believable Dr. Manhattan.
Oh yeah.
The way Billy Crudup portrays him is so right. He is sad and distant, but also powerful.
That was interesting to me when he started speaking.
Yeah.
He was very slow. And let me also say this, that I don't know, did you feel that the movie moved at a slow pace?
Well, it was 2 hours and 40 minutes, so...
Well, right, but there's 2 hours and 40 minutes, action. Like The Dark Knight is 2 hours and 40 minutes. But to me, this felt like Zack Snyder lingered very long on a lot of different scenes and lines, as if he expected you to sort of soak in the emotional weight of the situation.
Right.
He would linger like on the casket for the comedian, or he would linger on a particular exchange or something, and I thought he expects maybe us to get some more out of this, to not rush our way through it, and I fully respect that desire, but it just wasn't there to get. So I felt like it actually could have been a lot shorter, which for a comic geek to say that, it sounds like sacrilege, but I think I agree with the studio that this film should have been shorter.
Fair enough. Yeah, and that scene where they go out for the first time, it did kind of just seem like, here we go, there it is, okay, we're done.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The events were happening, literally happening in front of me, but I was expecting my heart to be pounding like it was in the comic.
Because your mind can fill in like the added hour of time of them just flying around and joy cruising before they see the fire,
Right, and that actually brings me to, I think, the final question I want to ask during this review, and I think one of the most important, which is it better to have read Watchmen or not if you're going to see this movie?
My personal opinion, it is better to have read Watchmen.
Did you see this with anybody who hadn't read the comic?
Yeah, I saw it with my girlfriend.
Okay,
and
Amber also hasn't read the comic, and she really enjoyed it. And that's the thing, is it seems like people who haven't read it are finding it decent,
Well, Sarah didn't enjoy it.
Oh, okay.
As much, And you know what? The weird thing was, parts that she did enjoy were things that she had, like, just picked up the thing and paged through and be like, I remember this part,
Okay,
and I think that's kind of cool, was like, I know what's coming, and there it is, and it's as awesome as I imagined it to be.
Yeah. Maybe see the film first and then read it to see, piece it in. I don't know. I honestly don't know. It's a tough one for me.
My feelings are this. Alan Moore is a master comic book writer.
Yeah.
So as an experience, between the two experiences, you should pursue the comic book first,
right. Yeah.
Between the two.
Maybe the geeks were wrong all along, maybe literal interpretations aren't what we want so much as we just want to feel the same way.
It's like Hugh Jackman in X-Men 2. Or X-Men 1. What were you expecting? Yellow tights?
Right, yeah, it's kind of funny, but at the end of the day, X-Men feels like a truer interpretation, even though they changed the costumes.
Yeah, because what's exciting isn't Wolverine what he wears, it's that he stabs people with his claws.
Whoa.
Well, no, when he stabbed that guy, people said that's Wolverine, not you show somebody in a yellow suit and you're not going to go, that's Wolverine,
One of the truest comic moments on film that I ever felt was that scene in X-Men 2 when he's in the kitchen with his wife beater on and he just goes nuts on those SWAT team dudes.
Yeah.
I mean, I was ready to scream at how awesome that was. And Colossus comes out and stuff. But, I mean, it felt amazing,
Yeah. So we've moved on to other. But, yeah, Watchmen is a panel-for-panel recreation. And a lot of it, I feel like they do get the emotions right. But still, it doesn't do that ultimate payoff that the comic book had. A twist that requires you to go back, reread, and then come back.
Yeah. As an artist, too, I think Zack Snyder is phenomenal. I loved his style, and I wish him well in adapting further things. And I actually thought the 300 was a great movie, top to bottom,
and better than the comic book, I felt.
Yeah, it probably, and people have said that about History of Violence too. That's based on a comic. So, well, I think we've said enough about Watchmen.
Yep.
So before we close out our show, every week we like to get nostalgic and peer into the past, remembering what it was like growing up geek. And this week I want to talk about Pokemon.
Pokemon.
I remember Dad singing like that, Pokemon.
As if that was the theme song.
Right. He didn't know the theme song, but he would come into the room and we'd say, "What are you watching?" "Pokemon." And he would go, "Pokemon." It was like, awesome. But anyway, Pokemon memories.
The first rule of Pokemon is accruement.
Yes.
Gotta catch them all. My first encounter with Pokemon was the anime cartoon, but at the time it was only on at 6 in the morning, as most imported animes were. And it was like Jigglypuff was on and Cubone.
Yes. Ridiculously adorable characters.
And I was just like, what on earth? And I realize I'm confessing to small crime here, but I ran an emulator of Pokemon,
right?
The Game Boy game, and just to check and see what it was like. And I ended up loving it, and so then I got it on Game Boy. I think Matt got Pokemon Red. I got Pokemon Blue.
Right,
and
yeah.
Basically, it's an RPG for simple people. Walk around, collect animals, and battle. Yeah.
And make them fight.
And it works.
In fact, my first memory of Pokemon is of reading the news stories that people were having spontaneous seizures in Japan caused by Pikachu's flashing eyes on the television show. And I had never heard of this. And they were like, the television show Pocket Monsters, which is what it's called in Japan. And for such a cute character to cause like people to like vomit and like twitch on the floor, I thought was just such a weird but hilarious story.
It was sort of animes coming out in America, like everything even started to adapt an anime style, just like even shows that were created in America. There was an original Japanese Pokemon series. In the first few episodes, there's a lot more emotional depth with what's going on. You have Brock being far more perverted than he was in the...
There's always that perverted character, you know, Sailor Moon or whatever.
Yeah, it's like a staple of the thing. It's like you got to have a pervert, you know? Like you just gotta, otherwise people aren't going to watch your show.
Apparently, yeah. It brings me memories of Ranma Half, the little guy that would float around and look at girls' underwear or whatever. And I just remember seeing that and being like, Japan is crazy, you know? But I will say, I always wanted the game to feel more like the cartoon in a way because... Well, to be more graphically advanced because it was a Game Boy game forever, and then when they brought it to like the next gen quote-unquote systems like N64, it was like the Pokemon Snap or whatever where you took pictures of Pokemon. And I'm still waiting for them to do like a full-blown anime style because you know they could do it. If you've played Naruto, it looks like the cartoon, like exactly.
Yeah. Pokemon is one thing that would make an incredibly fun, massive multiplayer game.
You know what? Good idea. And we're still waiting for that console MMO, you know?
Run around, collect Pokemon, trade Pokemon, and you have that satisfaction of honestly having a rare Pokemon, and you present it to somebody and you're like, hey, I got this rare thing. Give me 5 of those, you know. That would be even more addicting and fun. But for now, it's kind of like this isolated thing. They're coming out with Pokemon Platinum soon, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, I don't get why it's always on the DS. Like, I understand traveling with it is cool, but it lends itself so well to the MMO. I think you have a really good idea there.
So if anybody who knows anybody in Nintendo is listening, pitch that idea.
There you go.
We want a Pokemon MMO.
Yeah, I do remember going to see the movie with you and your then girlfriend, who shall not be named, and who was really into anime, which was to her credit. We're not going to bash your ex-girlfriend, but whatever. We went and we saw.
That's forever and a half ago.
Yeah, exactly. But I remember sitting in the theater and toward the end of the first Pokemon movie, they make like this weird message, and they say like, "You're not slaves, you're our friends," you know, to the Pokemon, and I was sitting there kind of like, nah, they're your slaves, pretty much. You know, I mean, you put them in a ball, you put that ball in your pocket, and only when you want them to fight do you bring them out. I mean, that's basically cockfighting, you know? I mean, it's like, let's not act like they're your friends, although they are really cool. Real quick, favorite Pokemon?
Favorite Pokemon?
Psyduck?
Psyduck, yes.
Psyduck was awesome.
Actually, he was.
It was totally useless. He just popped out of the ball and was like, Psy!
Uh-huh. And was in the game, but he was just such a ridiculous... The duck, it gets headaches, and then that's how it attacks people.
It launches psychic energy. That is beautiful. How about Snorlax? Speaking of useless... It's like, does Snorlax do anything?
He can take a lot of damage, so he's good to kind of throw out there and have do nothing while you can replenish your other Pokemon.
Yeah.
Wheezing. Just like wheezing.
Yeah, that's beautiful. We could go on all day about that. We got to stop because we're running out of time. But
honestly, I think Jigglypuff probably one of my favorites, just because it's
the
a
song.
Circle within circles, the cutest looking ball of poof, and you're just like, and it sings this.
And you
song.
really do believe that song would like lull you to sleep, because I think in the cartoon, doesn't it like have an effect on people? Yeah.
It puts anybody and everybody to sleep. And then Jigglypuff gets mad, pulls out a marker, and just starts drawing on people's faces like a frat boy.
Yeah, he's evil, but he's so adorable. So we got to go. But if you grew up geek like us and you'd like to share any topics you'd like us to address, you may do so. Our website is found at growing-up-geek.com. That's going to do it for this week. Once again, my name is Brad.
Paul's a dead man. Miss him, miss him, miss him.
And we'll catch you next week.